Hey everybody, this is Andy, aka Ghost, and I'm here with another Commander Cast Deck Builder Spotlight. Here, and this week, I'm going to be interviewing Carlos, who is running a Child of Alara deck. Why don't you introduce yourself to everybody listening, Carlos?
Hey, I've been playing for a couple years, and this Child of Alara deck is kind of the most exciting thing that I've been able to do in Magic so far. It's a lot of fun to play. I'm really happy about it.
Okay, so you've got Child of Alara as your general. Obviously, this is going to be a 5-color deck. Now, why did you choose Child of Alara? What does it do for this deck?
I actually didn't choose Child of Alara at first. It was a Progenitus, good stuff, answer everything 5-color deck. And eventually I found out, you're just wasting too much deck space playing Wraths. And if Child of Alara is your general, you just have access to a Wrath all the time. And you can cut back on those and add more utility and cool things to the deck.
Okay, now this deck has a lot of lands in it, and a lot of interesting utility lands. So what was the reasoning behind that decision?
When I first started playing, the other 4 people I was playing with were all playing mono blue generals, and trying to cast a spell and get it to resolve through all of that was almost impossible. And so adding a bunch of lands lets you do whatever you want, and it's uncounterable. And then if you add a bunch of recursion, eventually you're going to get to resolve the important spells and try to stitch together a way to win the game.
Okay, now what would you say is the general archetype of this deck, and what kind of strategy does it follow in-game?
It's kind of like a control deck, but it's also kind of like a combo deck. There aren't ways that you just infinite combo and win the game, but it depends a lot on the interaction between a lot of different cards. And generally, you're trying to slow the game down enough that you can stitch together one of these synergies and try to pull ahead.
Okay, why don't we go over a couple of the synergies in this deck that are your main either win conditions or your big setups and combos that you'd like to draw into?
Sure. Probably 2 of the cards that do the most for the deck are Sun Titan and Nim Deathmantle, just because Sun Titan acts as an exploration and a crucible of worlds, so it gets you back fetch lands to put you ahead, it gets back some of your utility lands, and if you can just keep playing it with lands like Emiria, or you can keep buying it back with Nim Deathmantle, and it just makes it really hard to wrath your board away because you just keep getting things back. Nim Deathmantle is something that people haven't really been catching on to. That card is Recurring Nightmare. If you have sack outlets, like my deck runs Diamond Valley and High Market and Myron, you just blink creatures in and out of play, you abuse their comes into play effects.
Yeah, I've been finding it's a really powerful card as well. I think it's a bit of a sleeper hit, but people will catch on once they see it played a couple of times. Now, you mentioned using
Right.
Emeria in the 5-color deck with so many non-basics. So I'm assuming Prismatic Omen plays a role in making that active. Now, you were telling me earlier that that also does some other interesting things with the deck. What are some of the other key interactions with Prismatic Omen? Because that seems like a pretty important card.
Right. The most surprising one that just wins the game sometime is Last Stand. And for people who don't know, Last Stand says, for each swamp you control, target opponent loses 2 life. For each plains you control, you gain 2 life. For each forest you control, you get a 1/1 Saproling. For each mountain you control, you deal 1 damage to target creature. And for each island you control, you draw a card and discard a card. So it's kind of like Cruel Ultimatum on steroids.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome when you can resolve it with that Omen. Now, you've also got another key card in there is Glacial Chasm. And I'm sure this is a card that a lot of people have looked at and thought, maybe, but this cumulative upkeep is a little bit difficult to deal with. So why do you have that in the deck, and how do you deal with that cumulative upkeep?
I have that in the deck to make sure that you don't die to creature decks in the late game, because eventually you just run out of gas and you can't wrap their board anymore, and it shuts down decks that want to kill you with creatures and damage. And the way you deal with it is, if you want to pay the cumulative upkeep, you have Diamond Valley and Myron sacking big creatures like Sun Titan and Child of Alara, and you just get them back with Emeria or Nim Deathmantle or whatever. And that gains you a bunch of life. Nomad Stadium gains a bunch of life. And the other thing is that you're playing Crucible of Worlds and Exploration and Azusa Lost But Seeking. So you can just sacrifice it and not pay the upkeep, and then just put it back into play, sacrifice another land, and be fine.
Okay. And that, would you say, because to me that seems like if you can get that card in play and you have the pieces to repeatedly play it and take it away so you don't have to pay the cumulative and play it again, that card alone can win you games against a lot of decks. You know, unless they have a way to destroy it, which some people neglect to put into their decks. Like, that's almost a one-card win condition, just because they can't beat you anymore.
Right. And even if you don't win the game there, it gives you so much time to try to put together a way to win that a lot of people just can't deal with it.
Okay, now speaking of winning, what would you say is your most consistent win condition?
My most consistent one is probably Venser the Sojourner.
Really?
He goes ultimate an awful lot.
Really? I never would have guessed that, actually. That's awesome.
So he's probably one of the ways that you start to close out games. The way that you actually deal damage is either Last Stand or Valakut.
Hmm. Have you ever beaten anybody down with the Child of Alara?
I have occasionally. It has been known to happen. But I'll be honest. I think I've won more games by running people out of lands with Ghost Quarter than I have with Child of Alara beatdown.
Wow. That's rough. Okay. Now, outside of the Sun Titan combo, etc., what would you say are the key things that make this strategy actually work? Because you've got this emphasis on lands and recursion. So why is it that this deck can pull ahead even against a multiplayer table?
The reason it can pull ahead is that a lot of the things that you want to do aren't counterable. Like, if you resolve a Crucible of Worlds, like, people just can't deal with you. You can play your Horizon Canopies and your Cephaloid Colosseums, and you can do whatever you want because they can't counter lands. And the trick is that you have to play a lot of recursion. And something that people find is that if they give this deck enough time, you have to have so much removal to put it back in its place, I guess. Like, you need to have enchantment removal and land destruction and Wrath my board and all these things. And even if you do it, I can play Child of Alara and Wrath your board and then put together another recursion engine. Like, it just gets so hard to keep the deck down after you give it time to set up Nimdeath Mantle or Dawn of the Dead or Sun Titan.
Okay. Now, what would you say are the strategies and or cards that can give this deck a hard time, that are decent counters to it, difficult strategies for you to beat in time to set up your engines? What kind of strategies might it have a weakness against?
There's three things that the deck has some trouble with. Really fast beatdown is always hard to deal with. There's a sliver deck at our group that gives me trouble from time to time. If you can put together like a pretty good board presence and have some kind of land destruction, you can destroy Glacial Chasm and then just kill me before I have a chance to set it up again. And the other thing that the deck has trouble with is ways to repeatedly exile someone's graveyard.
Okay. Now, this is a pretty pimped out deck. You've been playing it for a while, you can see. But if you could add anything else to this deck, what would it be?
I kind of want to try Jace the Mind Sculptor in this deck, but I just can't see paying for that at this point in time.
The expense is pretty astronomical at this point. Do you have any advice to anybody that wanted to play a similar deck? Key things that you've learned while playing it, important plays, what you want to set up first, that kind of thing.
I think the most important thing for the deck is actually Emeria and making sure you can get that active. Like, whenever I have fetch lands, I'm fetching up white sources. Because that's an uncounterable recursion engine, and if you have ways to get back your lands, then even land destruction isn't going to stop you for too long. And so that gives you a really good way to win the late game, because worst case scenario, you can just wrath the board with Child of Alara every single turn. And that's one of the most important things. Probably the best thing that you can do to really make your deck as good as it can be is you want to push whatever your theme is as far as you can go. Like, if it's tokens or lands or whatever, do as much as you can, because that gives you the explosive starts and the late game finish.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So unless you have anything else to add, Carlos, we'll wrap it up there.
I think that's good.
Okay, so if you want to take a look at Carlos's complete deck list, we'll have a link to it in the show notes. I suggest you check it out. It's really interesting to see an EDH deck with such an emphasis on land, and it has a lot of really cool technology in it. So take a look at that. Send us some feedback at commandercast@gmail.com. As always, check out the website at commandercast.blogspot.com. We've got the midweek updates with the video content, and now we have a columnist posting for us regularly, a Stray Penguin. And we also have the podcast every Monday, so be sure to check us out.